Welcome to LakeCraft. This is a quick walkthrough of the state of LakeCraft, the LakeCraft project in late April 2014. Welcome. We are currently standing on the representation of the Burlington Bay breakwater. No, it's not made out of stone like in the real world, but it's roughly where the breakwater is. That's not something that we had real data for, so I made it up. But a lot of other things in the world have been modeled based on real data. So let's go look at the world and see what we can see. What's out here? Well, this is the Burlington waterfront area, the breakwater, and this is probably where the ferry dock might be, or the Echo Center. And we can see a bunch of roads. The roads are modeled with real-world road data from the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, and that data actually is generated by VTrans, I believe, Vermont Department of Transportation. So it should be pretty accurate. Of course, the resolution of the world itself is a little blocky, as we can see. But that aside, the roads are relative to one another where they ought to be. And they serve as a pretty useful way of figuring out where you are if you know your roads in the area. So this is Burlington on the hillside here. Moving up, we would run into Church Street. I'm not sure which one of these is Church Street. I guess I just don't know Burlington well enough. And then further up would be UVM, and somewhere along here is Main Street. To our north, we can travel over and find Winooski and the Intervale, the Winooski River, and if we travel up the Winooski River through Winooski, here are the falls in Winooski, and we're lacking a bridge there, but there's a bridge. We'll get to Interstate 89. So the roads were modeled based on real-world data. The real-world data classifies roads into different classes, and local paved roads are modeled with this broken stone texture. It's called cobblestone in the game. The other road classes that we've modeled, well, we've got Interstate level, which is modeled in what they call obsidian in the game. Obsidian is obviously a mineral that Interstate 89 is not made out of, but I thought it looked relatively like asphalt, so I used it for that purpose. We can follow Interstate 89 back from Winooski, and we'll get to the Clover, if you use your imagination, of the on and off ramps for the Burlington exit. So the UVM, or the University Mall, is somewhere around here where these trees are. And we can go further. Here's the Shelburne exit, and you can go that way down to Shelburne. And we'll follow Interstate 89 east. So obviously we have the digital elevation data in the topography. We've got roads data, and here we can see we also have stream bed data, stream locations, and hydrography locations. Unfortunately, due to the way in which water is modeled in the game, we have had trouble filling up the stream beds with water. So the majority of the Lake Champlain Basin's streams are actually just empty stream beds. There are some places, such as close to Lake Champlain, where we were able to flood relatively low level, or I guess lake level rivers and streams. So that's what we saw with the Winooski back closer to the lake. I believe that this is probably, I don't know if this is the Winooski, but we'll go further along Interstate 89 and we can see that the Winooski River closer to Richmond, at least, is not filled in as of yet. We are actively seeking a solution for that problem. I've modeled trees not on any real-world data at the moment. That data does exist, at least for certain years. I can't say that it's super up-to-date, but it's pretty good. We can put trees where there ought to be trees and wetlands where there ought to be wetlands. That's still to come. At the moment, the trees are modeled by elevation and are placed randomly. So all trees below a certain elevation, I don't remember what the number is are going to be deciduous trees. And then there's a zone in which you get a mix of deciduous and coniferous trees, and then you end up with coniferous trees above a certain elevation until you get to the alpine line, and then there are no trees. Here we are in the Richmond area. This is Interstate 89's Richmond exit, and we can see down close to the ground that we have more of these road class questions. We've got the interstate, and we have gravel here, which is supposed to model dirt roads. You know, official dirt roads, not just mud trails, but real roads that are just gravel roads. And then this smoother stone is used to model things like state highways. So this, in this case, is Route 2. And if I had time and inclination, I could build the bridge across the Winooski that was recently renovated on Route 2 that goes right here. So the Winooski is empty, unfortunately, in this area, and it's certainly not impossible to fill by hand, and so we're going to see that I've done some river filling by hand further up. Where does that river go? Oh, where does it go? So here is Richmond proper. We can see the cobblestones are the local paved roads, and then the smooth stone is Route 2, and the local paved roads, we've got Bridge Street, which extends down towards the Winooski, which is empty. It goes across down towards Huntington and Heinsberg. I know the area because I live here, so I'm not too lost. And we'll get back over here to Interstate 89. I decided that I'm going to take you on a little trip down to Jonesville. Why Jonesville? Well, it's a good disembarkation point from Interstate 89 to go find a little project I worked on. So this is the Jonesville area. And we can see I've modeled some of the water, but the water doesn't flow very far, unfortunately. So it takes a lot of manual placement to get water in where you want it to be. And if I go a little bit further up the road here, this is the actual Jonesville Bridge area. And we can look and see a bit of the issue that we are experiencing with resolution in the game. Because of the need to condense the world to a smaller size from what the actual GIS data would allow, we end up with areas, especially where a lot of roads and rivers and things are close to each other, where they actually end up overlapping in-game. And so that's the case here. We've got Interstate 89 on top of the Winooski, which is also on top of this road, which I think is supposed to be Route 2, but obviously Route 2, well, none of these things should be relative to each other in these positions. So it's one of the weaknesses of the data. We could model the world at a 1-to-1 ratio for the GIS data that we have. However, you saw how long it took to get to Jonesville from the waterfront, and this is 1/20th of the scale of the real world. The best we can do, I think, is 1/10 of the scale of the real world, and so it would take twice as long, and so you can see how that could get to be a problem. The Minecraft game system, and so LakeCraft 2, experiences 10-minute days and 10-minute nights, and here we have the moon rising and the distance. Obviously, things rise in the east and fall in the west, which is pretty normal. Let's go back to Jonesville, and let's take a stroll through the countryside here. Now, I believe the road that we are going to follow, which is a local, I guess, paved road, is called the River Road, and it heads off down towards, or over towards Waterbury. Now, I don't recall it being this heavily canopied by trees in real life, but it is a pretty canopied road. Why am I going this way? Well, you get a sense of what it's like to walk on the ground instead of fly, and eventually we're going to come along to a little path that I built to demonstrate just, you know, that you can do anything you want to with the world. We don't have to rely on real world data and real world places. I can have my very own path that is built into the hills to Lookout Tower. Oh boy, aren't you excited? Let's go find out where this Lookout Tower goes. Hiking trail to Lookout Tower, if you want to call this hiking. Yep. Now it's lit, even though it's night, because I've placed torches along the path. The world can mimic reality in lots of different ways. For example, it can rain and it can snow, and we have day and night. There's lightning, there's animals. All of these things are true. Also, by default, the game at night tends to generate monsters randomly to make building things harder. The monsters get in the way. We've tried to limit those sorts of inconsistencies, though, taking the monsters out, and in cases where we've had summer camps that use the LakeCraft world, we've tried to do things like limit access to certain magical shovels and pickaxes and things, which would be, you know, highly unrealistic. Oh, we're almost there. I don't know if it was a 1 mile from that last sign where it said a mile or not to this tower, but here's the tower. And the tower's really tall, and I could go up the ladder, but I'm going to fly up. It just turns out to be a lot faster to fly. And here we go. Here we are on the tower. Oh, if I can... trying to land, but there we go. So, view towards Camel's Hump Mountain and State Park. While you're thinking, I can't see anything, it's night, and I don't see much of a mountain over there either. That's true. We can see off in the distance that we have stars, and it's dark, and it's black. And a big part of that is how quickly the game is able to load data for the hills and draw the trees and all of that. Because the server for this is located on the Burlington Gigabit cloud network, people using LakeCraft inside of Burlington on the Gigabit network there should be able to experience a much faster loading of data and thus display of data. Oh, we're starting to see the very edge of Camel's Hump in the distance. Where's that moon at? It's pretty much still overhead. But let's just pretend that we have the power to change time and put the sun in place. And now we can really start to see Camel's Hump forming in the distance. Now, the data that we have applied to the game world so far is mostly Vermont-based. So the digital elevation data applies to the entire Lake Champlain watershed, both Vermont and New York, and a little bit in Quebec. Roads data and the hydrography, so for lakes and for streams and such, that's all just in Vermont. The game world does have lakes and ponds, and those have water in them. It's just that the streams and rivers do not. The game world's roads should apply to the entire Vermont portion of the Lake Champlain watershed. And we have lots of other opportunities for applying GIS data to the game as well. So we can see a better sense of where the coniferous trees are up in this higher elevation as opposed to the deciduous trees that we had below. And then there's this sort of fake alpine line where it transfers from grassy to rocky, and I guess you could pretend it's talus if you wanted to, although there's not individual rocks to stub your toe on. And then it gets to be snow-covered at a higher elevation. If we were to travel over to Mount Mansfield, we would see there's more snow cover. And then if you were to travel to the highest point in the Lake Champlain watershed, which is on top of Mount Marcy in New York, then you would see a lot of snow. So I'm just traveling back to this incredibly realistic lookout tower, and I'm glad you were able to join us for this little walkthrough and tour. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Nick, at flourish.net, F as in Frank, LOERS as in Sam, CH.net. Or you can go to LakeCraft.net or look for hashtag LakeCraft on Twitter, and hopefully you'll see it in other places in the near future. As a last resort, if you have questions about LakeCraft, feel free to contact the Code for BTV, Code for America Brigade, and they can point you towards myself and Nita Ridabino and John Cohn and Will Fallows, the LakeCraft team. Thank you, and have a good day.